get it started. So this is okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Gary Åsund. I'm the Managing Director of Mikon. This is going to be a 45-minute session where we are going to show you how to get value from your process and manufacturing data using Harald's system called Visplore, which is a powerful and visual interactive tool for exploring data. No coding required. Our agenda today is this welcome and introduction, and then I'm going to go quickly through Mikon AS, and then we go through the demo. So Mikon is, we are working with industrial reporting systems, handling production processes, laboratories, and emissions reporting. So we have our own software systems, in addition to a data analytics team, which is a dedicated group of experts doing all kinds of data science work, actually. We're using Python, Power BI, and Excel, in addition to Visplore, of course. In addition to that, we have an operational excellence team working with lean methodologies to eliminate waste and maximizing value. I'd also like to mention Mikon, the web page. Go there. Where we post this, we're going to post this webinar after, let me show a recording of this webinar. You'll find that on the blog and news pages. And I'll also like you to know that we have, there we go, yeah. We have another webinar coming up next week on Wednesday, where we are going to talk about the new Server X, which is our own system, which can be tightly integrated with the Visplore as well. So with Server X, you're going to get a new version of our own system, Mikon, and this should be of great interest to those of you who are using Mikon in production today. So that's going to be hosted by Fredrik Olsen, our CTO, together with Bernd Brenner, who is a lead software architect, and you will learn a lot about the background of Server X, what it will mean for our customers, and some examples as well, real-world examples. So with that said, I'm going to hand over to you, Harald.
Thanks a lot, Geir. Okay, nice to meet you all. My name is Harald. I'm the CEO and one of the founders of Visplore, a company dedicated to provide very user-friendly ways to leverage big sensor data you have from systems such as process historians. Okay, I will start by sharing my screen.
Can I just add one thing, Harald? I forgot to mention the chat. We have a chat here that you are very welcome to post in the chat. We might not reply to the chats if you have any questions, but we're going to wrap it all up at the end and answer any questions you might have.
Thanks a lot. Yes, that's important. So whenever you have a question, please feel free to just type it, and we'll try to cover as much of them as possible in the end. Okay, so Visplore, a very user-friendly AI-powered analytics for IoT and industry. I think I don't need to motivate the topic of digitalization very much in this context, but actually one thing is that for daily decision-making, it's actually still very important to leverage subject matter expertise like process engineers, asset management, and to enable those people to work with the data that is more and more being collected, stored, managed. And actually there it is a bit of a bottleneck because many of those subject matter experts don't really have a very deep, let's say, data science background. Yeah? And that's one of the reasons why some companies struggle to achieve their digital transformation goals. And this is exactly where Visplore comes into play. Visplore is a software solution that has the motivation to bridge the gap, to empower engineers with very user-friendly AI-powered analytics, to give basically very user-friendly tools into the hands of those people who really can interpret the data and actually know which actions to take, for example, to solve a specific problem. So a very Visplore in a nutshell could be, let's say, summarized in the graph as this. What Visplore does is it fetches the data directly from a persistence layer of OT, IoT data. So typically it connects to data historians such as the Viva Pi system or others, can be SQL databases. We're actually very flexible to support numerous data sources. It's possible to contextualize this data from processes and assets with IT data, like, for example, ERP data coming from an SAP system or others like laboratory measurements. And basically this explains how Visplore gets to its live data and also to longer data histories. So why do people use Visplore? Actually, most of our customers have some sort of dashboard in place. This can be Power BI dashboards, this can be Grafana dashboards. Customers who have an OSIs of Pi system or a Viva Pi system typically have Pi Vision. And these dashboards are great to provide situation awareness, to show people what is just happening. But when it comes to the question, why did something happen and when it will happen again, typically these dashboards reach their limits. And this is exactly why our customers chose to, in addition to the dashboards, have Visplore exactly for this deep dive. So maybe here's this slide goes into a bit more detail on this topic because it's, let's say, a very recurring question that we see over and over again. So is Visplore yet another dashboard solution? And actually, our answer to this is no, it is not. Because of what I just said, dashboards is providing situation awareness about what's currently going on. It's a visual overview, and typically it's quite limited also in the analytics possibilities. Whereas Visplore is an advanced analytics tool that explains why did problems happen, how can you improve. That is very optimized for doing deep diagnostics and also prediction in the data. With Visplore, you typically don't work on the, last 2 hours of data, but typically you work on longer time history, sometimes going back several months or even years. And the key goal of Visplore is to provide an analytics-guided way of browsing results, querying the data in a graphical way. And as we'll see in the demo, there is much IoT-specific analytics included. And very important, it's not an either or. It's not that one is better than the other. Actually, both have their strengths, and simply in reality, you actually need both the what and the why. So let's maybe have a brief look at our customer base. So actually, Visplore has customers all over the world coming from different verticals. We have a lot of traction in power generation and also utilities, oil and gas. So you may recognize some logos here, but actually Visplore also has a strong track record in several types of manufacturing industries. So like, for example, pulp and paper with Mondi and Nordic Craft and others. Customers there. We have in steel production, we are in chemicals, in pharmaceutics, in discrete manufacturing. So it's actually really quite diverse. And Visplore also has a rich partner network all around the globe. Mikon is one of our partners, very appreciated. And we also have others, for example, system integrators acting as partners for Visplore. So what is Visplore now used for? Actually, there is an entire variety of implemented use cases that kind of also differ a bit between industries. So in continuous manufacturing, it's very much about energy efficiency and quality prediction, like pulp and paper and steel production. We have use cases in pharmaceutics and chemistry where it's much about yield maximization from batch processes. In verticals like power generation or the energy sector as such, it's very much about asset health, monitoring, predictive maintenance, sometimes capacity planning. So there, for example, we have good use cases where Visplore saved also companies in the Nordics actually several weeks of unplanned downtime, which translates to more than €1 million of avoided revenue loss. But we also have customers in discrete manufacturing and automotive supply, where they, for example, are eager to reduce the scrap rates, improve their OEE reporting, and more. So maybe let's look at very briefly 3 user success stories in a bit more detail. Actually, the first one's coming right from Norway. It's coming from Hafslund, a hydropower, or actually a power generation company there. And in a nutshell, what they use Visplore for daily troubleshooting tasks, and this specific use case is about when they saw that they had problems with one of their turbines, and Visplore enabled them to do a root cause analysis literally within minutes, finding out that actually a certain bearing was the root cause of the problem, which enabled the service staff to go directly to that bearing, fix it. And this was important because if that turbine would have been operated longer, then there would have been major breakdowns, which then would have meant 3 more weeks of unplanned downtime. Then here in, for example, in thermal power production, Luminous is a company from Belgium, and their Visplore helped to detect and localize leakages in steam boilers, which was also important to actually do the maintenance work in a more efficient way, avoiding days of downtime, which again translates to avoided revenue loss. And this is actually a use case from pulp and paper, where Visplore was used to optimize and monitor the operation of a heat exchanger, saving here in this case fresh water, and also the amount of energy be consumed. So these are some, actually we have, you're very much welcome also to look at our webpage, visplore.com. There you also find a much longer list of success stories we have, also from other verticals like batch production and way beyond. What I actually want to do now is to give you really an impression, like how does it feel? Yeah, now I think you get a bit of context what Visplore is used for, but actually how it feels is actually one of the big, let's say, USPs that we see, because what many of our users report is that actually the way how easy it is and how fast it is to do some advanced analytics with Visplore is what they appreciate most. Yeah. And I want to start with a very, very simple workflow that's still very versatile. Namely, very often you need to compare process time periods to each other. Yeah. And actually, it's just 4 steps. So you can directly load in data from one of the data sources that's supported. Then engineers can select time periods, as you will see in the demo. This can be before and after a change of a process or asset. It can be now versus a reference period. It can be a good period versus a bad period. It can be much more. So it's actually quite versatile. Then, as we will see, there are advanced analytics that automatically detects what is different between this time period, which distribution, patterns, and so on have changed. And then actually it's based on that, it's very easy for the subject matter expert to go through the results, browse them, and assess what does it mean? Were there improvements, for example, by a process intervention, a further intervention needed? So this is actually, again, a point where the subject matter expert comes into play. And a very short live demo I want to give here is to show how it's possible to assess changes before and after process intervention in case of a CCGT plant. So this is a thermal power plant, but actually I would want to emphasize that the very same workflow is applicable to basically every kind of asset and even most kinds of processes. So with that, I just briefly leave my slides and go here. So this is Visplore. The first step when you just start it up is typically to import some data. And there are different sources possible here. And what we want to do in this case is we want that actually directly from a process historian, and in this case, the Aviva Pi system. So we can select this as a source. In order to speed up the demo, I already pre-configured here. You can basically define the time periods here. You can define any number of tags you want to import and much more. I don't go into detail here, but just press OK. Now Visplore fetches the data directly from this data source. And then, and this is actually a big advantage of Visplore, is you don't need to build up some dashboards or anything, but you're right in an environment where you can get some visualization, can work with these visualizations. So for example, I could switch tags here, could select which tags I want to see, or could even do things like say, okay, I'm just interested in the full load state. Then I click here and then I get only the time periods here that correspond to full load in this case. But what we actually want to do here in this case is we see that there is some kind of longer overhaul here, and we want to understand how has the operation of this asset changed before and after the overhaul. And this is literally 4 clicks. So click number 1, I select here the time period before the overhaul. And as you see, I can easily do this graphically right in the visualization. Then I select here, click number 2, the time period after this overhaul. Then I just click here the compare button and I confirm this dialog. And then Visplore does some analytics, and what I get is a result. You can see it as a browser that automatically does a ranking of characteristics that have changed in the data between the blue and the orange time period. Yeah, so maybe just do a very quick thing that this gets a bit nicer here. All right. So if we, for example, click the first result, then we automatically see this variable. And for example, when we zoom into this histogram, we see that the level here has changed. Yeah, and we can also confirm this by zooming into this plot here, that actually here, the base level of this steam mass flow has changed. Yeah, so this is maybe something worthwhile pointing out, because due to these outliers up there, this might have been something that you could have missed otherwise if it was just about dashboards. Now, it's not only about single variables, but when you click here, for example, you see that also the combination of variables is detected. So here, for example, we see that there is a correlation between this compressor inlet temperature and the exhaust temperature set point, but actually it's different. There is a shift in this correlation between before and after. And now let's maybe, as a final example, let's look at the correlation, if there's any change regarding the generated power, and actually it turns out, yes, there is. Actually here we see that the generated power is here on the y-axis, and the compressor inlet temperature is here on the x-axis, and for the same compressor inlet temperature, actually, and this is good news to the people who service this, we are now producing more power than what we did before. Now, there is a bit of noise here. This is because it's not always operated in full load, but this is actually something where you can easily work with the graphics. So for example, I can say, okay, I just use this as a tool to select data, yeah, drag a lasso like this here, and say, okay, this is actually the part of the data that corresponds to my full load state. Yeah, and as I say, we can do this right here in the tool. Then I can filter this, and then actually I get something where I can nicely show some regression lines of before, and based on these regression lines, it's also now possible to quantify by how much megawatts actually the performance of this plant have improved due to this overhaul. Okay, so I leave the first use case here. I wanted to keep it quite short. Go back to the slides for a second.
Can I just add one thing there, Harald? So this is a predefined presentation, right? In Visplore.
Yes, this is a predefined.
And you have several of those.
It's a feature. Basically, we have several predefined cockpits, but as you saw, you just need to import some data, and then you can do. So I could have imported any data here. Yeah, this was not there was no specific setup for this presentation or anything. I could have imported any kind of data coming from in the first part, even a CSV file, and I could have done the very same analytics.
So this is very user-friendly and quite unique actually for this tool. And this is the way you would work with a kind of root cause analysis, right?
It's one approach to that. We will see in the second demo more that's going into correlation analysis. But yes, you're right. It's one way how you can do root cause analysis to find out basically what changed between different time periods.
Okay, thanks.
And think this is also very important. This workflow is so simple. Just getting in some data, doing some selections, clicking compare, interpreting result, that it actually our users typically learn this specific workflow within 30 minutes. Yeah, and then they can already do quite a lot that you wouldn't typically be able to do in other dashboarding solutions. Okay, now let's look at the second demo, and this is a bit more advanced. This is from a continuous manufacturing process. Actually, it's from pulp and paper process, but it's quite relatable to other continuous manufacturing processes. And there, let's say, I want to show a bit more steps. I want to show how you can do a product-specific root cause analysis of energy consumption. Yeah, so energy consumption is typically quite relevant to many industries. And understanding where does high energy consumption come from, and especially what you can do, for example, which process, how can you tune your process in order to reduce the energy consumption. So this is actually quite of an important concern, and I want to show exactly that. And I also want to, in the end of this demo, show how then you can even turn this into an automated report that, for example, when you use too much energy consumption at the moment, that you're automatically notified about this. Okay, so for this, let's start here. Just for brevity, in this case, the whole thing I did is I already merged 3 different data sources. Yeah, because in Visplore, you can actually merge data coming from multiple sources, also different ones. And in this case, actually there is process data. Yeah, it's real data, but it's anonymized. Yeah, so it then looks, for example, something like this here, time series like this. Then we added 2 quality indicators of the process. So here, for example, you see this thickness of the paper as one type of quality indicator, something like this. And what's already merged is additional ERP data for contextualization to identify when each product was being produced. Why? Because there are different products which were produced. And for example, let's click just for the very most frequent one, then you'd see, okay, all the time periods when this certain product was produced. So also very easy, but actually what I want to show is how to add such another data source. And in this case, what we will add is the energy consumption as such. So let's add this, in this case from a file, but it could also be from a database or anything else. And here you see that basically we have each 10 minutes, we have basically the amount of energy consumed. So I just add it. Then Visplore suggests this as a 4th data source in this example. We just say OK. And then basically, if we now filter this, then we have here energy as another variable that we might add. And then we have a time series like this. Okay, so this is all nice, but now actually we need to do the real root cause analysis. It's not about just visualization, it's about understanding what drives this energy consumption. So this lowest time series here. And what we can do is, let's say we focus on the 4 most frequent products. Yeah? Not look at all products to keep it a bit more simple, not look at a single product, to avoid keeping it too simple, but let's pick the 4 most frequent products. And let's distinguish them by color here. So then we see these 4 products being distinguished. And now we can actually, as you already mentioned here, there are actually different types of what we call cockpits to do certain type of analytics. Yeah. So for example, there are cockpits for regression analysis, pattern searches, and much more. In this case, what we're interested in are correlations. So we switch here to the correlation cockpit. And actually, what we are interested in is here, this part. Let's start with the part here above. Because what we see here in this heat map is actually an ordering of all the parameters, and the color as well as the number here is the correlation coefficient with energy. And this distinguished by the 4 products. Yeah? So the first column here is product N, the second one is product Q, and so on. Yeah. So what we can do is, if we, for example, click at the very first line here, we see all these 4 products and how they actually correlate with energy. Why this first line? Because this has the strongest correlation. Yeah. We can, of course, also click at individual products like this. Now we have only selected product R. If you now look at the second column here, we see that actually also there is a strong correlation. But actually what we see is that there are certain stripes here. Yeah? So there seem to be certain different modalities in which this process has been operated. And let's do a bit of a deep dive here. Yeah? So say, just putting this into filter for a second and say, okay, let's just look at this specific product R for a second. Then say, okay, why is there certain variance here? How can we find out where this comes from? And one way to address this is now just to do a selection here like this. And we say, okay, let's look at all the data periods where this parameter is more or less constant. Yeah, so a value of around 20. And now basically you see that immediately as we are doing this, the view here on the left-hand side reorders. Yeah, so it puts other parameters here on top. And then we get, for example, here, other parameters like this, 243, which basically shows that whenever this, if you look at the time series down here, you see that whenever this parameter is high, actually, also there was high energy consumption, whereas when this parameter is low, energy consumption used to be lower. That's where this high correlation comes from. And this is actually how we can now browse easily through additional parameters to really do a deep dive where actually the drivers of high energy consumption come from. And all this in a very, let's say, visual, user-friendly way. And basically what you can also do here, I skip this step here for brevity, is you can do a modeling of the energy consumption. Yeah, so I could build a regression model here. And to continue this use case then, I want to switch here over to something I prepared. It's the same data as used before, but in this case, there is already a prediction of the energy consumption, which is here this blue line. Yeah, so what this blue line actually is, it's a model built in Visplore to predict the energy consumption. And now this is meant as a kind of monitoring dashboard. Yeah? So what we see here is the actual energy consumption in orange, and we see the predicted energy consumption here in blue. And if we compare the two, yeah, we can actually identify anomalies. Yeah? So for example, what we see here on top is a heat map that for each product, which are the rows here, and for each day, which are the column, it describes basically if the certain product at that day had, for example, higher or lower energy consumption than what would have been expected. Yeah. So, for example, click here, then we see here this was actually the energy consumption was lower during that day than predicted by the model. Whereas if we go here and we see here, for example, there is a part of the time when it was higher than expected. So this is very much could be seen as a kind of dashboard that can be set up once and then just opened up on a daily basis on the most recent data. Very easy to use, very also friendly for users basically who maybe just be interested in using such dashboards. But what we actually want to do here now as the last step of this demo is we want to set up some alerts. Yeah, because we see that sometimes the energy consumption and the prediction, there is actually a difference between them. And what we can do now is, let's say we do here a selection on actually the residuals, so basically the difference between the two, and say, let's cap it at a value of around 20. Yeah, then we basically see here which products had a difference, for which product was the actual energy consumption more than 20 kilowatt per hour higher than it was due to the prediction, and when did this happen. Yeah. Maybe to even improve this up here, now at the moment it shows the mean, but we could just switch this to show, for example, the overall duration in hours, and then we immediately get an overview for at which days, for which product, this situation that we had too high energy consumption was. So in this case, for example, it's 5 hours, and here it's a bit less than 4. And now, having set up something like this, we can easily turn this into an automated alert. How can we do this? Very easily. All you need to do is here to click on this button and say we want to create a conditional email. Conditional in this case, because we take this selection on this on this too high energy consumption as a basis, as a trigger. Yeah. So let's call this unusually high energy consumption. And in order to increase a bit the robustness, say it needs to be the case for at least 2 hours. Yeah. It should actually trigger. So not every small instance should trigger, but if this is, let's say, the case for more than 2 hours, then this should trigger. So we just confirm this. Then Visplore asks us, do we want to attach some images right to the emails that are sent out if we detect such a situation? We say yes. So let's attach here the heat map and the time series. And I just now send this to email address here, automationdemo@visplore.com. And I can click here to do a test. I could, of course, add here some additional messages, what to do in this case, maybe what to inspect, what to look at, but I skip this here now for brevity. I just press run now. And then there was one email being sent. And hopefully, if we click here, the automation demo, actually we just received it here. Here it is, the email just sent now, and we see unusually high energy consumption with the graphics right embedded. And this is a way how even users who don't need to use Visplore at all can benefit from Visplore by getting emails like this in a very easy to-do way. And now to finish this, here we say, okay, this is what we want. So let's say we want to schedule this. Yes. Say we want to schedule this, for example, once per hour. Just confirm it. And then basically we can save it. And this is now it's live, this check, and it's permanently checked once per hour. And whenever we see such situations, we will be notified immediately. So what have we seen? We have seen how to merge data, how to use correlation analysis for some deep dives, in this case for energy drivers. We have also seen how this can be used to do this in a product-specific way. Yeah? So not looking at the entire process, but doing it as product by product. And we have seen basically how this can be turned into a dashboard and into some automated reports that are received then whenever we spot situations such as too high energy usage. Okay, and this actually already brings me to an end of my presentation. So what does self-service analytics with Visplore mean? It means that actually we empower engineers, data analysts, managers, operators to use plant data for daily decision, to diagnose problems in just a few clicks using AI-powered analytics, to interpret results immediately based on their own user experience, because this is very different. It's very important that people who have the knowledge what all this means are really capable of driving the data analysis. Otherwise, it's a very lengthy back and forth between the data experts and the subject matter experts, and this is exactly why Visplore speeds up this process so tremendously, because it's basically then democratized. That people who have the knowledge can do it themselves. Then we have briefly seen how it's easy to implement findings immediately as alerts and be notified, and also to reduce unplanned downtime and waste of resources, as is the ultimate goal of the analytics. And then, of course, also based on this, Visplore can be seen as a driver to increase the return on digital investments. For example, if a system like an Aviva Pi system, I mean, this costs a lot. Yeah. So I say there is a certain pressure to show some return of invest on these digitalization investments, and Visplore can be a tool to really significantly increase the return on all your digitalization investments. And this is, as I said, not competing with existing dashboards, but it's actually complementing dashboards for the deep dive part. And it's also not competing with fully automated AI, which is, of course, a very powerful and very useful tool. But Visplore is the way how you can include your subject matter experts in a more direct and more precise way, graphically, in this dialogue between people and the data. Okay, so this basically is the end of the presentation, and I hand over back to you, dear.
Wonderful, Harald. Thank you so much. That was a great demo, as always. Let me just summarize a few takeaways then. You have a long list there, but I think it's pretty obvious that Visplore gives you the speed and flexibility to work directly with complex data, which you did show, with no coding, which is really important. And it's easy to perform sophisticated analysis in a very, very short time based on what you call cockpits, which are pre-configured models, right? And lastly, combined with any data store, that being Pi data, Mikon data, or CSV files or whatever, you get a seamless way to explore and act on your data. So in a way, Visplore functions as a data concentrator. So can assemble all kind of data into Visplore. Wonderful. We've got a few questions actually, and if there are more questions, just you can ask them in the chat. I've got a couple of questions for you here, Harald. First of all, we haven't talked about the cloud. Does Visplore transfer data to the cloud?
Actually, no. Visplore is an on-premise solution, so most customers of us have it run on-premise, and Visplore doesn't duplicate the data. Yeah, it fetches the data directly from sources like process historians, ERP systems, and so on. Yeah, and it just fetches the data it needs, so there is no data duplication, and especially it doesn't transfer the data to the cloud. Yeah, so
and that makes it different from some other systems like Seek, for example, which is only cloud, which I know that some people think can be problematic actually. So a lot of companies prefer to have it on premise actually, which is good. Okay, what about batch production? You haven't talked a lot about batch production use cases. You mentioned pulp and paper, but is Visplore suitable for batch modeling?
Yes, thanks a lot for the question. So while this use case was for continuous production processes, actually we have lots of customers in batch production, pharmaceutics, chemistry, and there, basically, what we do, or what our users typically do, is they appreciate Visplore a lot for using features such as pattern search to extract specific phases of a batch, or sometimes also the entire batches, overlay them on top of each other, and make it very easy to correlate with outcomes of the batches, such as yield or some kind of purity KPIs, in order to find out how does the golden batch profile look like. Yeah, and also then to use this profile in order to optimize the process, and also to monitor in which way this relates. So this would be, let's say, a very typical use case in batch production. Also, comparing assets sometimes is, so for example, some of our customers say, okay, they have 2 reactors where they actually producing the same product, but still the outcome is a bit different. And then basically Visplore helps them to compare these assets in detail and find out, for example, how does the batch process differ from one reactor to another, to explain, for example, differences in the timing of the batches, or the outcomes such as yield.
Okay, exactly. One last question for you, Harald. Training, how much training do users need to get the benefits of Visplore?
Yeah, it's actually ranging from, let's say, it starts with 0, literally, because as I showed you, the most simple way to use Visplore is actually to benefit from automated emails that you receive. When you, let's say, do more on the consumer side and do use cases, as we've seen with this comparison of data periods, this is actually something you can really learn within one training session that takes between 1 and 2 hours. Yeah, this is very, very easy to use and easy to learn. And this is also typically how we start with new customers, to do some kind of training workshop and show them analytics like this. If you now, let's say, you are in doing very advanced building very advanced analytics and also tuning, let's say, the dashboards a lot, and building advanced models and so on, then typically this is, in our experience, a matter of maybe something between 1 and 3 weeks of time that you need to work with Visplore when you really master it all.
But still very, very short time, and almost 0 just to get some benefits, right? Okay. Thank you so much, Harald. All participants will receive an email with the link to this recording after the meeting, so you're free to distribute this. It will also be posted on our website, as I mentioned initially. Please reach out if you want a follow-up meeting to learn more about the options you have with Visplore. Also, let me remind you of the next upcoming webinar next week on Wednesday, which is about Server X. We are 1 minute over time, so I think we will end it here. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us, and a special thanks to you, Harald, from Visplore, who had done a great presentation again. So with that said, bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for your participation, and thanks for the kind invitation here.
You're welcome. Thank you.